heartless geeks and purveyors of stabby goodness. Welcome to the Knife Freak Show. My name is Johnathan McNees. This is my co-host, Mr. Chase Boatright.
How y'all doing today?
Be nice if they could respond, wouldn't it?
Yeah. I don't know why. I don't know if I should talk to you or if I should talk to them. I go back and forth, and I just kind of say whatever. I don't have a line like you do, so it's hard for me.
Good. Yeah, it does make it a little bit easier. So
yeah,
you kind of get put on the spot. Anyway, we do hope all you guys are having a great. We're recording this on the weekend, so we hope you're all having a great weekend. Put it that way.
Yeah. Did you have a good week in the shop?
Yeah, it's been pretty good. We got let's see, Lord, I don't even know what. I'm trying to think what all we've even been dealing with. It's been kind of slow, honestly, just because I've already talked about it a little bit, but like I think I talked about last week about the hard milling thing and all that.
Yeah.
Did I talk about that? So still been trying to get the hard milling thing to work, breaking crap tons of end mills. And I think may have finally gotten down to a point where it's going to go, but go slowly and still going to break end mills, but an acceptable amount, hopefully. Anyway, I've actually got a stack of some that I can actually start grinding now and put the bevels on them. So, and hopefully going to have more coming after that. It'll just be slow. We've also got, I told you we were going to go that route and then decided, no, that's not going to be viable. So we got to go back to doing them, all the milling on them while they're still soft, send them to heat treat, get them hardened, bring them back, and then grind them. So we sent off a decent sized batch to Peter's heat treat. And I think if they're not already on the way back, I think they'll probably ship Monday. I'm hoping they're already on their way back. I did some begging and pleading, and then we've already got another batch the same size, a decent amount, that we sent off Thursday. So anyway, so we're getting it rolling now that I figured out that was the problem, was we didn't know. I wasn't sure. I thought I knew how we were going to do it. Then we hit a roadblock with that, and I'd already gone so far down that road that it's taking a little time to kind of back up a little bit and take the other fork, So I had to
kind of change gears.
Yeah, had to change gears a little bit, but we're back to getting pretty close to rolling now. So some of these, being able to kind of limp along and get some of these hardened ones to the point where we can grind them, and then once we grind them, it's just finishing them and putting them in handles. So, fitting everything out. I know that sounds oversimplistic. Just put them in handles. After
do it.
Fit the lock in the detent and tweak everything. So anyway, but feels like the easy part after dealing with the hard milling and stuff. So.
Yeah, for sure.
I feel pretty good that we're on track for having a nice batch of Dixons for Blade Show. So that's going to be great. We're already we may trickle a couple more Mac 2 things out, but we've got most of the Mac 2s that we're going to take to Blade Show already kind of done and ready to go. So that's good. I'd like to have a handful of fixed blades. We'll see how that goes. We're prioritizing the Dixons, of course. So anyway, how about you? How was your week?
It was good. Didn't have I had less time than usual this week. I was supposed to be doing this podcast, as you know, from the beach. I was going to be doing an on location sort of thing, but that didn't end up working out. So I missed yesterday, and had other stuff going on throughout the rest of the week. But I did still get a lot done. Surprisingly, I contoured a bunch of handles. Got a few blades that were like Damascus blades. Got most of the grind lines out, and stuff like that, getting them ready for etching. I contoured the Dixon. I've still got to go back and fully finish the handle scales and all that. I think I still need to drill it for the pocket clip too. Then for those listening, it's the collab Dixon that we're doing, one of the original custom Dixons that I'm building. And I did some other contouring and just other stuff. Spent about a whole half a day trying to inlay some pearl into a pivot, and finally got that right. That was fun, but should be cool. It's got it's going to be a cove with a pearl inlay pivot, obviously, and it's got some of that Fat Dunes. I don't know if you're familiar with that pattern specifically, but Fat Dunes or Black Dunes, fat carbon fiber, and so it's got the dark and the light, and then it's Mike Norris Hornet's Nest Damascus. So that's one I'm excited about, and yeah,
Very cool.
just kind of working on stuff steadily and slowly and trying to keep everything moving,
Sweet. Yep. Awesome. Sounds like you're
Yeah.
making some good progress. So
Yeah, it
think we'll
felt like
work
more of a
into
progress week.
than when you
Like it,
talk about it. Yeah.
yeah, like sometimes I kind of go through like a low, like I'll do a bunch of stuff, but it doesn't feel like I'm making
Right.
progress. And then all of a sudden, like, oh, they're starting to take shape and do
Yeah.
stuff. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Some of the steps for sure seem like you know, they feel like more progress than other steps. Like when it starts
Yeah.
to actually look like a knife and feel like a knife, and
Yeah.
get
Especially with like contouring and stuff. Like,
yeah,
I wait to do that until like I'm absolutely ready because once you eliminate flatness on one side, you can no longer, there's a lot of things you can't do
right,
once you no longer have a flat and parallel part on both sides. And so
yep,
I try to wait for that and, try to make sure I'm ready and make sure I'm ready and make sure I'm ready one more time before I actually do it. That way I
right,
don't get myself backed into a corner and have to do some
right,
sort of strange fixturing or anything like that. Or
yep,
God forbid, actually have to rebuild, the lock side or show side or something like that. I've had to
yeah,
do that before plenty of times. But yeah,
yeah. It's
just
always
steady
a little
progress
bit
working towards a blade. Sorry, what was
good.
that?
No, it is always safer for sure to save the contour until one of the last steps for sure.
Yeah.
But it does make it feel like it goes from being a very unfinished feeling, knife handle to a much feeling very close to a finished product at that point.
Yeah.
So
You feel like, oh, I'm basically done. And then that gets you into trouble because you're like, oh,
yeah,
well,
there's still several steps. Yeah,
yeah, there's still a lot of things that need to be done. And, I think that's a lot of my, sort of problems. I'm like, oh, that was basically done. I can work on this other one. And, then I'm like, oh, wait, I still need to do this and this and this and this. And,
right.
but yeah, these things happen. So,
Yeah, cool. I believe we had some. I think this week we were just going to try to. We didn't have any super major pressing topics. I'm sure we'll talk more about Blade Show, for a whole podcast or something as we get a little closer to it. But for this week, I think we're just going to try to keep it more or less kind of a Q&A. You guys have been being fantastic about commenting and sending in questions and all that good stuff. So we're gonna just tackle some questions and see where that takes us. Knowing us, it'll probably go down some rabbit hole, but that's fine too. So we appreciate you guys helping us, giving us some subject matter to talk about here.
for sure. So I will send out the first one, and this is from Andy. Excuse me. Um, and he said, "What do you guys think about knife competition and reality TV shows like Forged in Fire? Would you ever consider being on one?" And I'll let you hit that first.
Oh, gonna let me hit that one first. All right, so Forged in Fire, which is mainly about the only knife reality show that I know of that actually like aired more than a couple of episodes. But the I think overall it's a net positive for the industry. I think that it's brought a lot of awareness, brought a lot of people into the industry that and interest just from it being on TV and people seeing, hey, this is like just normal people doing this. It's not necessarily some fancy factory doing this or whatever. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah,
kind of like I've talked about with my beginning of how it took me seeing that people were doing this in their garages and their own little shops and stuff, and it wasn't just something coming from a big factory. That before I kind of stopped and realized, like, hey, this is something I could do.
yeah, yeah. I was very much the same. Like I knew
Yeah,
people did it. I'd been to like local places where they had like a blacksmith, doing like the old timey thing, and I knew like people used to
yeah.
do that, but I didn't think people still did that. Like as a kid. So
Well, and I didn't know that people made stuff of the caliber that was being made. You know what I mean? Like I'm like
yeah,
you. Like I
yeah.
was thinking of somebody made something out of an old file, or they turned a railroad spike into a knife, or I'd seen stuff like that at
Horseshoe.
like arts
Yeah,
and craft shows and stuff like that. But yeah, but like the kind of stuff that's being done, and to include that on the show, I mean those guys do some amazing things on there. So
hmm
that being said, there's also some negative to it. I feel like because it is a reality show, which basically means it's the exact opposite of actual reality. It's
yeah,
uh, it's not actually reality. A lot of steps are skipped. It makes it look like it's in some ways. I know in some ways it makes it like it's hard because they show them messing up and having problems and all that. That's all part of building up the drama of it. But it's also, they skip a lot of steps, and people assume that they know more about what's going on just from watching the show than they actually do.
Just because they're on TV, whoever's on there gets like a credibility bump automatically. And I'm not saying they're not. I know, some guys that have been on there and they're certainly, know their stuff, but it's, not a clean sweep of a statement, I don't think. But
no, I mean, there are definitely people on there that, and there's, lots of ways to get things done, but you can watch the show and see different people that have different opinions of how things should be done. So some are, I would say at the very least, some are more correct than others. So go with that. For somebody like me that doesn't forge, it's honestly a little bit of a pain in the ass, just because, I mean, people will see, like, I've got my big logo across my side of my truck or whatever. People will see my truck at a gas station or something. Oh man, you make knives like forged in fire. I'm like, yeah, I know, like, yeah, we make knives, but I don't forge. I just gets into people that don't really know the difference. You know what I mean? They think that what they've seen on TV is how everybody makes knives. So like, it's a whole, it just kind of makes it a little bit of an awkward conversation or whatever. I probably make it more awkward than it has to be. I mean, I should probably just kind of roll with it. But
yes and no. But I mean, there is always that, like, oh, so you just buy a blank, and they sort of denigrate stock removal. Probably not intentionally, and that also happens. Like, I don't know, but they don't understand that there's another way to do it. There's two ways to do it. Neither are correct. There's just two ways to do it.
Right.
And so,
yeah, and and like you said, I've had that happen too. Not always tied into the forged and fire thing, but just people in general want to know how we do stuff or whatever. I think a lot of that too, though, is just kind of like you said. They're not doing it to try to, like, make light of what we do, or make it seem like it's less. Like, they truly don't understand. Like, they can't fathom that somebody is buying a sheet of steel. Like, they don't understand. Like in your case, that you're buying bars of steel or sheets of titanium or whatever, and literally just taking that and turning it into a knife, or for us, the process of doing the same thing, except we're just starting with using a water jet, to cut out the parts or whatever and go from there. So, like, they don't get and comprehend exactly what it is. So it's just ignorance. When I say ignorance, I don't mean that, I mean literally, like,
no, it's just
right.
Yeah. Lack of knowledge. Yeah.
Yeah, they don't have the context to understand it. So yeah, I think it's a net positive, for sure. Gets a little annoying at times when, everybody that you talk to on the street is like referencing it, and it's like, no, that's not what I do or whatever. But again, I think it's definitely a net positive. Would I ever do something like that? Well, obviously I don't belong on Forged and Fire, so I don't forge. If they wanted to come to my shop and make a reality show out of me acting like an idiot every day, then sure, I'd probably be on board for that. It would depend, a lot of it would depend on, because all of those things, they make stuff out to look the way they want it to look. So I would have to evaluate it, but I definitely wouldn't have, like, just a line in the sand where, no, I'd never be on any kind of show. If I thought it was going to be a positive for the industry and a positive for us as a company, as a brand, then yeah, I'd probably do it. If I thought they were going to make us look like total idiots, or, which probably wouldn't be that hard to do in my case, but if I thought it was something that or that it was going to come off as somehow dishonest, or you know what I'm saying, like, something like that, where they TV'd it up enough to where it was like just not even real at all, then I don't think I could live with that. But I wouldn't be against just across the board, being on something like that. So, what about you?
For me, same thing as far as all the forging stuff. I mean, like you said, I mean, I tried forging early in the beginning, frankly, mostly because my stepdad was a big fan of Forged and Fire, and he wanted, he knew I wanted to make knives, so he bought a forge, and so he was like, I want to forge too, and I tried it. I'm not a fan of the hot work aspect. I don't even like pulling blades out of the oven. You can attest to this. I get real nervous, real fidgety, real twitchy. I don't care for it. That is real, real hot, and I'm not comfortable. So I don't want to be around, sparks flying and all that. I try to keep things nice and cool,
Yeah.
So that's one of the things that just sort of drew me more towards the stock removal. Also, would I ever consider being on TV? No, I don't even like this camera being on me right now. I just, yeah, I'm not a TV type guy. I'm not a character. I don't know. I'm not a look at me type person. I'm rather, I don't know, introverted. And there's a reason I work in my backyard and, alone. So I'm just kind of, there are times where I can, when we did YouTube videos and stuff for your thing, I could be on camera and play a character for a minute or two, but I don't really want to do it for any extended period of time.
Right.
It's just not my nature, I guess. But yeah,
nothing wrong with that.
And yeah, sort of the same, I guess, echoing the same sentiment. Like I do think it's good that more people out there know that people make handmade knives.
Mm-hmm.
But there is also that negative for our half of the industry, as far as and I don't know if it's exactly half, but stock removal versus
Right.
forging. And so it is what it is. I've never really been a big fan of the TV show just because I don't know. At the time it came out, I wasn't even really watching TV anymore. It was right when I moved off to college, and I didn't, I had DirecTV when I left home. My parents did, but I didn't have it, in a dorm room or in my apartment. I had a TV, but it just mostly just sat there. So, I wasn't paying for that. So on a college student salary. So, I didn't really watch a lot of TV since that point. We just now got a TV in our house that we've lived in for 4 years. So that's, there's that.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah.
It makes sense.
So what?
I said that makes sense. That,
yeah. It didn't, I don't know. I did love like some of the other reality shows from History Channel, like Deadliest Warrior and some of those back in the day. I loved that show. But, at the time I was in life, and when it came out, it just didn't ever connect with me. So, but do appreciate the question, Andy.
Yep, for sure.
All right. Next one. And this is from Steven, jumping around to a more recent question. And he says, for people that are interested in getting a job working for Johnathan in his shop, what experience is necessary for someone that has none in that field? What kind of schooling, if any, should I be looking at? I'm sure it's relative to what you would be doing for said job, but I'm just curious as a general rule of thumb. So.
All right. So that one almost feels like a trap, but I know he didn't mean it that way. So first thing you need to do is be able to put up with craziness. So there's that. Moodiness sometimes. I'm definitely a very up and down, hot and cold kind of person. When things are going good, I'm out there literally hooting and hollering in the shop. And when things are going bad, I try not to throw stuff much anymore, but like I've definitely been known to let out some screams and occasional things. So yeah.
I think he's overplaying that aspect for the record.
Maybe I literally
worked
screamed about
for
something the other day and had employees later ask me, "So what happened?"
Oh no, you have done it. I'm not saying you haven't. I'd be sitting there working on something, and all of a sudden I'd throw the knife up in the air because I didn't know what the hell just happened. But I'm not. It wasn't a common daily occurrence.
No, it's not an everyday thing for sure. All right, but on a kind of a more serious side of it, so honestly, it would all depend on the job that you were potentially being hired for. Like you said, as far as education stuff, as far as like a general to work in the production side of stuff, to actually building the knives, then honestly, you don't really need any kind of specific experience. We do have one guy, our Joseph, that runs our mills, which does a great job. He does other stuff too, but we don't have enough mills yet that's just a full-time all-day thing for him. But he does have a degree in machining, so that was helpful, but not necessarily required. I mean, we were already running the machines and stuff before. Actually, he started to work for us while he was in school still, and then stayed on once he and came full time after he finished machining school. So that kind of stuff can help. Actually, having experience working at another shop can be helpful. It can actually be harmful because a lot of times with
I
stuff
was going
like
to ask
that,
you that.
yeah,
Yeah,
people can have
like
bad habits that, which I haven't hired anybody that's like a machinist that's worked at another shop so far. Joseph is the only. Actually, we do have another guy's cousin that graduated from the same program that he has, but we don't really need two people running the machines at this moment. So he's kind of, I guess, a backup almost, but he doesn't really run the machines. But other than that, we haven't had anybody that's come in from another job doing anything similar to this that has bad habits that we had to try to break or whatever. But I do know from talking to other people and stuff that's something you have to potentially look out for. So
yeah,
honestly, just somebody that's good at working with their hands is, have really good work ethic and are able to learn and, especially learn from your mistakes and all that. So and just kind of fit in with our culture here. Like we're a very tight knit team and all that. So, but as far as, for general stuff, there's really not anything I'm looking for as far as experience or whatever. Cause I mean, honestly, we talked about it a little bit before, but we're in a, as we grow, we're probably going to reach a point where we might be looking at being the kind of place where somebody might take a job and move here or whatever for the job. But currently, I mean, we're in a very rural area. Most of the people that work here are, they're basically local boys or whatever. So they all live right around here, relatively close. And you're not going to find somebody in an area like this that has experience working in a knife shop. The closest thing you might be is find somebody that's worked in a machine shop. And again, that's not necessarily a positive. So I just basically need somebody that's kind of a blank slate. You got good work ethic and good, and ability to work with other people well, take instructions, learn from your mistakes, that kind of stuff. Then that's really all we need, So we're looking at some point in the not too distant future, probably looking at maybe trying to get some people to do some more specialized stuff, like maybe social media content creation, photography, stuff like that. So somebody like that obviously would need some sort of a resume, back, not necessarily school, but at least something to be able to show us their work, what they're capable of, what they've been able to
yeah,
do, that kind of stuff. So, and then, but I'm sure the question is probably geared more towards like actually working in production, building the knives. So,
yeah,
not necessarily any particular experience or whatever, but definitely need to be somebody that's okay with working with their hands. Because let's face it, not everybody. I mean, there's some really, really smart people out there that are really not good with working with their hands. Like it's just, I mean, it's not necessarily an intelligence thing or whatever. It helps if you're intelligent and can work with your hands both, but that's definitely the best of both worlds. But there's a lot of people that just are not good with working with their hands, and that's that's not great. And
yeah,
you need to be able to work under pressure, like as far as like being able to work fast but still maintain quality, because I'm definitely a foot on the gas kind of guy. So it's um, we always walk that line between speed and making sure we don't miss little details that don't need to get missed. So,
yeah,
but yeah, just basically be a good person, good general overall, you know, work ethic and be good or at least decent at working with your hands. Pretty much it. So
cool. Yeah, I figured that was a good one to kind of touch on because that's
yes,
probably something at one point that would have been a question I was asking. At the very
yeah,
least, I'm sure it kind of was at one point,
yeah,
but
yeah.
uh,
Well, it's an interesting kind of thought exercise for me too. As we get, like I said, as we get bigger, it's
yeah,
it's going to be something to think about that we might actually look at attracting people that actually might want to relocate or whatever just because they want to work in the industry or whatever. So
yeah. I mean,
that,
I kind of more so just fell into your lap. I'm sure things
yeah,
are a little bit different now, and so
yeah, it just I will say too though I have heard from other people too that it can be a little bit risky hiring somebody that like is a big say like they're or a big knife freak, right? But they don't necessarily know what the job itself is actually all about, like just an interest in knives, because you don't want to get somebody in here and then turn them off to the whole thing because it's not as glamorous or whatever as they wanted it to be, because there's definitely parts of it that are not glamorous.
I don't.
But
what part is glamorous? I mean, I guess standing at Blade Show, being behind the table, and having people want to come talk to you is the glamorous part. But the rest of the year.
I mean, we try to share some of the stuff. I mean, like, so for like me and Amy, we get to see, like say when the Dixons dropped the other day. I mean, that was freaking awesome to get to see all that feedback and all the hard work that we put into bringing that to market, and then to see them sell so good. So we try to share that with the team, but it's still not the same because they're not seeing it in real time and stuff like we do. But we try to share that with them so that they get a taste of that too. And like you said, Blade Show. I think everybody last year that worked here either was there working the show or came to the show one day and hung out for a while and just kind of explored the show and hung out in the booth. But so they got to see, people coming to the booth and see, and interact with people. And I try to remind them on a regular basis, I'm like, dude, like, you realize that, like we just sent a big batch of knives to Germany or, the Netherlands or wherever. I'm like, you realize that that knife you're working on may end up like all the way in another country like that. And it's, when you stop and think about stuff like that, it's really cool, and it's cool to think about the stuff that we're making right here in our little rural area being in people's hands all over the country and all over the world. So it's just, I need to remind them about it more, but that's, I don't know about call it glamorous, but it's cool. It's definitely cool when you stop and think about it. It's just like most every other part of your life. When you stop and think about and like take, kind of audit the things in your life that you have to be thankful for. There's a whole lot of stuff that's cool or that's awesome that you just kind of take for granted on a daily basis. So the work itself, maybe not so much glamour, but thinking about the end results and what we do and what we're building it's pretty cool. So
not saying it's not cool or that I don't like it, but just I was thinking about that earlier this week as I was looking at my thumb being absolutely shredded from dealing with fitting locks and like disengaging unchamfered lock bars and stuff, and that sort of thing. But
nice cut on it like that.
There was like
getting them on the fingertips. That's super fun.
Oh yeah, especially if you get in there grinding with it, and it's all like hot and wet, and you've already got like cuts on your finger, and it's great.
It's fun.
Anyway. Moving on. From Kelly Poissant. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing that. I most likely am. But he's they ask what daily tools do you carry other than knives? Or I guess they're asking both of us. And since you just talked a lot, I'll take it first.
Yes,
I mostly carry I carry a flashlight, Sharpie, a pen, a lighter. I guess as far as tools, that would be it. I carry some other stuff like chapstick and stuff, but that's not interesting. But I would say the thing that gets used the most by me on a daily basis is probably a Sharpie, just because of working in a shop environment. The pen doesn't come up as much in a shop environment, but like before I worked in a shop, I would say the pen definitely was the thing I reached for the most, then probably the flashlight, then probably the knife. Like it was, definitely in that order. But so.
Okay. Mine's pretty similar. I typically carry a pen, and I go through phases. Like I'll carry a pen, but then if something happens, I've had different ones over the past, and I had them, then I get unhappy with the pen for whatever reason, or something went wrong with it, messed up or something. I'm carrying a tactile turn G10, like solid G10, one of their, I think it's one of the bolt action ones. It's what I've currently been carrying, and I like it. It's stayed in my pocket, I guess, longer than almost anything has to this point. So consistently. So that, a little flashlight, and I've just got like a little, well, it depends. Sometimes if I'm going out like in public, going out somewhere, like say we're going out to eat somewhere or something, I might carry a little bigger light that's maybe a little more like a tactical light. But typically when just a day in the shop, I'm usually carrying it's basically a little keychain light, a little string light keychain light that I throw in my pocket. It's about the size of a couple of quarters stacked together, and it's for what it is. It's plenty bright enough, and like as well as I do, that in the shop, like there's lots of times, there's always time you need a little bit more light, like you're a little screw or something falls under the bench, and you're trying to find it, or whatever, or you're leaned over in a machine trying to look at a part, and you need a little extra light, something. It's always something. So that's super handy. I've never gotten real consistent with carrying a pry bar. I keep meaning to. I have, and when I have, I found them super handy. I just never stayed consistent with it. I've been meaning to get some leather slips made for our pry bars that we're making, so I can carry one of those in my. Because I feel like it would be better with a leather slip to carry it in. So I do plan on implementing that soon. About the only other really tool, I guess, that I carry on a regular basis is a pistol. I mean, I consider that a tool. That's pretty much all the time. So, and I mean, this you said besides knives, so that's granted that we'll have a knife. So, yeah, that's pretty much it. Pen, light, not a pry bar consistently, and a pistol. That's pretty much. Sometimes Sharpies too, like you said. It just depends. I go through phases with that too. Like I'll stick one in my pocket and may ride there for a week, and then it gets laid down somewhere or something, and then several days go by before I grab another one or whatever.
Yeah, I generally, when I start the day, like I would say 3 days out of the, normally 6 or 7 days that I work, I'll have the Sharpie, in the pocket to start the day. The other 3 days, I've left it down in the shop, sitting on the workbench, right where, So, but for the most part, I generally have a Sharpie on me. But yeah, so.
Yeah, I kind of counter that a little bit by just trying. They still end up having a way to either all cluster in one spot or just disappear. But I try to keep Sharpies spread out all through the shop or whatever, so that there's never one, you're never very far away from one. But
mine do that too. They all find each other, and they're all like hidden over here having a little powwow. And
right, they've got some kind of little scheme going.
Mm-hmm. All right. For the next one, at TW Knives on YouTube, he says, this was a comment left. He said, super pumped to receive the Dixon this week. I'm guessing he ordered one from y'all, so awesome.
Yep.
And he says, can you elaborate on the collaboration, and great job, y'all. So thank you. Believe it's Tyler. Could be wrong. Thank you, TW Knives, regardless.
Yes, thank you.
So, and on the collaboration, he's talking about the collaboration Dixon that we're doing. And I guess elaborating on it, it's natural canvas micarta on the face scale, titanium on the lock side, CPM 154 blade. And I think I talked about it last time. You had initially ground the blade. You did most of the grinding, but I ended up having to go back and grind a little bit more because you never really finished grinding it.
I probably took it like 120 if I had to guess. That's about that or 80.
I think you had done it looked like you had done the plunges with a 220, but not the full blade with a 220. So, yeah. So I had to go back and do that. And
part of the reason that we're like questioning that, guys, is because this was one of the last Dixons that I was actually working on this when we switched over to doing production stuff, and it just kind of got stuck by the wayside. It's been stuck in a drawer or whatever here for years now. So I have no idea.
I'm guessing it was 2021.
Yeah.
Whenever you did that last USN show, like right after we moved into the shop or right before.
Yeah.
And
it had to have been, because from that point on, we really haven't. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was pretty much once we moved in the new shop. I don't think I did some, I guess, what would technically be custom fixed blades, but I don't think there's been any custom folders since then. So, it was probably in 21, sometime before, probably, September, August, September time frame, I would say, when I was working on it.
Yeah.
Anyway. So I don't know anything about it anymore because I don't.
I mean, I'd cut out you told me what materials you wanted to use back then, and I cut them out on the bandsaw, just a rough shape, and kind of and you chose what knives they were going on. But other than that, it was basically just kind of raw, like you had started on it, but never really got fully into it. So, yeah, what was I going to say? Oh, whenever, I was over there heat treating that blade, I was digging through boxes trying to find the pattern for the Dixon actually, but that ended up finding the parts. And so I was like, hey, can I just use that? And you're like, yeah, sure. I don't care. So,
been that long. I'm obviously not doing anything with it. So,
yeah. So, but yeah, I just thought it'd be a cool thing. And, especially with him coming out with the new version of the Dixon. And, last year we did a collaboration with one of my models, the Cove, and you ground the blade and that sort of stuff. So I figured it'd be a fun thing to do it again this year. Don't know if we'll do it again next year, but I haven't planned next week, much less next year. So
no kidding. Yeah, it is cool to see. I mean, for one thing, to have those parts not go wasted or whatever, and just to have it actually come to life is going to be pretty cool. So,
yeah.
And this one will have too. Yeah, this is, if you haven't seen Chase post the pictures of it and stuff, this is on the customs. Like I've talked about, the hole is an actual Spidey hole. It's an actual round Spidey hole. So, it's not the current diamond hole or whatever you want to call it. I've got to come up with a good name for that. I guess rounded diamond is kind of ish something. Anyway,
I thought you were going with shield. Like, I thought we had talked about that at one point.
Yeah, maybe so. That does kind of look like a wide little skinny shield. I don't know. Anyway,
go back to your G.I. Joe roots.
Yeah, there you go. All right, so that's hopefully got that one covered. What we got next?
Yeah, thank you, T-Nubby Knives, for that. Hopefully I'll get it far enough moved along and actually show you guys before, actually on YouTube before. I'm hoping by next week it'll be moved far enough along where I can do that. Next one from Rob's Nerdy Knives. He said, "What is a Hamon?" What? Rob's Dirty Knives.
Another thing, yeah. That's his other channel. It's R-rated, I think. Yeah, we're just kidding, right?
Okay. He said, "What is a Hamon process on a high carbon steel exactly? What is happening to the steel when you do this?" So, you want to lead off, or me?
Sure, I can. So basically, to create a Hamon, what you're doing is you are. All right. So let's start with when you heat treat a blade, the way it hardens is, and I don't know, like I can't give you all the exact. I'm not a metallurgist, all right, so I'm not going to have all the exact proper terms and stuff. But when you harden a blade, each different steel has a kind of a recipe. So when you harden a blade, there's a critical temperature, and different steels have different critical temperatures. When you reach that critical temperature on like high carbon steels like that, typically it's right around the time they actually go non-magnetic. I did it this way for years in the beginning, before I had when I was using like a little homemade I guess like a forge, is basically fire bricks with a torch or two stuck in there to kind of create like a little forge. And I would use a little magnet to tell when the blade had gotten up to the temperature that it was non-magnetic, which is kind of like the old school way to tell if it's reached critical temperature. There's technical, there's an actual number that is supposed to be. And I think for most of them, it's right around what, the 1600, 1650 ish. It's been a minute since I've done for the
no, like 1470 is normally what we did, like 1095 and W2 at.
Oh, was it? Okay, then my memory.
And 1412 is the technical point of like non-magnetic, but I could be wrong. It's 14 something, and that's why like in science. But yeah,
because I can't remember. So yeah, basically you get it up to that critical temperature, and then, I mean, for as far as like best practice, there's kind of some of them, like there's different amounts of time that you want to kind of hold it at that temperature. But for the most part, it's kind of the pretty simple ones like we're talking about. It's not that much of a hold time. Basically, once it gets to that temperature, it needs to cool off at a certain rate. So in a certain amount of time, it needs to cool off from that critical temperature down to a much lower temperature. And for something like 1095, it is a very, very small window. It needs to cool off in a matter of like, I think it's like a second, 2 seconds, something like that.
As quick as you can. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the technical thing, I think it's a matter of 1 or 2 seconds that it needs to
Okay.
go from like the 14, 12 or whatever you said down to like, I want to say it's like 400 and something degrees,
Yeah.
maybe 500 and something. I don't know. But it's pretty low. It needs to go from that critical temperature down to that temperature really fast. And that's what causes the change in the molecules and they harden. So you accomplish that with those two. That's why they're quenched in oil or water if you've got giant balls, is to because that will cool it off from that critical temperature down to that temperature that fast. So if you just pour it
Yes.
off and let it air cool or whatever, it's going to cool off, but it's not going to cool off fast enough to make it fully harden the way it's supposed to. So now that we know that, to do a Hamon, what you're trying to do is to leave the spine of the blade softer than the edge of the blade. We know why the edge needs to be hardened, right? But it's on stuff like folders and on most smaller fixed blades. It's honestly really more for looks than anything. It's not really doesn't really serve a real practical purpose. This came from like the Japanese katanas and stuff, so
Yep.
it's where you wanted the mass of the blade, the spine and stuff especially, to not be as hard, and not hard also equals less brittle, and so
Mm-hmm.
it could take more. It made it tougher essentially. So you have kind of the best of both worlds. You have a nice tough uh, spine, and depending on how far, a lot of those Japanese swords, the the softer portion came down pretty relatively close to the edge, so a
Yeah.
good portion of the blade was softer uh, slash tougher, and then you still had the hardened edge to perform like a hardened edge needs to.
Mm-hmm.
So you're less likely to break it, things like that. So that's where it came from. You accomplish that by basically that process that I talked about of going from the critical temperature down to the lower temperature in a certain amount of time. You slow that process way down. So what you do is you apply clay to the spine of the blade, the area that you're wanting to be softer, and so that when you quench it, the whole blade is getting up to. It's not protecting it from the heat. It's actually
Yeah.
insulating and holding the heat in. I think that's a
Yeah.
common misconception. It's
Yeah.
actually holding the heat in. So when you quench it in the oil, it retains the heat under that clay longer, so it cools off slower, which means it doesn't get as hard as the edge. So
Yep.
that's basically the gist of it. And
Yeah.
then you can kind of see it, after it heat treats sometimes, but then it takes there's traditional, I think on the traditional Hamons, they technically don't etch them in anything. When I say
Yeah.
etch it, like you put it in some sort of acidic. There's like people use anything from lemon juice um, to acid, which is what I used to use.
Yep.
And it etches it. It actually brings out that to the surface. You still have to polish it a certain amount, um, especially if you want it to look good and not have a bunch of crappy looking grind lines, in it and just looking rough. But but traditionally they would just you polish it enough. But so on a really highly polished one with a Hamon, you will still see the Hamon, but it's not the Hamon itself. In other words, the line is the part above the wavy line or whatever, and the part above it up to the spine is not necessarily any darker than the rest of the blade, but you can still
Yeah.
kind of see the pattern in there. Versus when you etch it, it essentially darkens the softer part of the blade more than the hardened part down at the edge, and so it creates more of a contrast. Which, as far as for looks goes, which is basically the only reason, as I stated, that we're really even doing it on the knives that we're making. It to me, it looks a lot better when it's a nice dark contrast to it. So
Yeah.
the fine line between having it polished out enough that you remove all the grind lines and stuff, and it's just kind of a smooth finish, but then with that darkened contrast to show the contrast. And what we would always do is etch it, and that darkens the whole blade. Even the down toward the edge will be darker. It won't be as dark as above the line, but it'll still be dark. And then you go back with something like flits, and you basically polish off below the line to shine it up some to create more contrast. So that was a very long-winded explanation, but I feel like, at least to my knowledge, that's how I used to do it. Now, maybe I didn't get all the science right. I don't know, but I think I'm pretty close.
Yeah, yeah. No, I didn't hear anything, as far as misnomers and anything, but yeah, it's basically just you're wanting to have a part of the blade that's hard and part of the blade that's soft, and like you said, the original intent of that was to create a better sword. In smaller knives and stuff, it's more of a decorative trait. It's not necessarily a functional trait, but it's just a
Right.
cool sort of throwback to that old world technology. And, it's just a
And it just looks
interesting
really
thing.
cool.
Yeah, it
Looks
looks
really
cool.
cool. And
Yeah,
I'd
but
say on some of the bigger knives, like some of the stuff that I used to make, like the big choppers and stuff, it
yeah,
definitely was functional.
yeah,
I'd say anything maybe like 5-inch blade on up that you're going to be using for, that you could put enough stress on it that it might actually matter without something
yeah,
else being a problem, then it's potentially functional. But just for most, high end folders and stuff like that, or small little fixed blades, it's not serving a real functional purpose, but except for looking super cool, which I feel like is pretty functional purpose in and of itself. So
yeah. And I guess I was, sort of self reflecting there because most of everything I've ever made with Hamon was probably 4 inches or less.
yeah, oh
I've
yeah,
made a
most of my
couple
stuff too.
bigger
Yeah,
stuff, but
yeah.
you
I
know,
mean, we did some bigger stuff, but it's yeah. I mean, the majority of it was folders and small. I mean, I used to even do them on those little PSK fixed blades that were like little less than 3-inch blade, I think.
yeah,
Um, so anyway,
yeah.
so yeah, hopefully that answered your question, Rob.
All right. So, got one more for today, and oh, what did I do? Oh, there it is. Okay. This is from Mike Lamb. Mike Lamb. Um, he said, "If money is no object, what knife would you buy?" And also, he said, "Are y'all doing another collab for this year's Blade Show?" Yes, we are.
Answered
But
that
yeah,
already.
if what? Yep,
I
yeah.
said we answered
Uh,
that already.
if money was no object, what knife would you buy? So for me, I tend to look at things in more of like a, I don't know, historical context. So I would want something probably with a little more historical significance than something that's necessarily like purely what's the hottest thing today. So with that, I would probably look at something like an original Skagel or like a Loveless Dropped Hunter or a Big Bear or something that would be like just a literally hanging on my wall like I have this sort of thing. As far as the need for a quote unquote functional knife, I mean it wouldn't, not saying anything bad about anybody like modern and current, but like I wouldn't necessarily go after uh an Oz Rosie or something like that. That's great knives, but I'm not necessarily looking at the what's new and hot, and that's just kind of my personality. I look more back for those sort of things. So
Yeah,
that's where I would go if I just had someone's like, here, I'll give you a blank check for whatever knife you want. Maybe like a Kaz, one of the Claudio Sobral ridiculous Bowie things that they do.
yeah,
Like those are incredible.
yeah,
But yeah, that's probably more where I would go.
yeah. And honestly, that's pretty close to stole my answers. That's it's pretty much the
Oh,
same. We just kind of think alike on that. I think no, I don't have. There's not any like currently popular just made recently thing. There's lots of stuff I'd like to have, but not like to pick
yeah,
like the one knife that I'm going to have unlimited funds to buy. It's not going to be like a current grail kind of thing. Um, Something historical. And honestly, I'll be completely honest, I'd have to do some shopping because I haven't in a long time, at least I haven't gone through and just kind of like looked at it through that lens. You know what I mean? Like there's lots of cool stuff, but when you have to focus down and figure out, okay, if I had to pick one thing, what would it be? I mean, something like you said, I would probably lean toward more one of the Loveless, like one of the like you said, probably the Big Bear. Um, I honestly wouldn't mind either having if you could. I don't have like one particular knife. Like I don't know enough about the history, but if I could go back and maybe get like a really early Ernest Emerson fixed blade or something from like his really early years, something like that. I think that
yeah,
would be cool. Again, I don't have. I can't say that I've really shopped out and you know prepared for what I would really want, but enough to know, okay, he made this one fixed blade in 1990 or whatever, and that's the one I'd like to have. But something of his, or like I said, and if I was going to get a Loveless, I'd probably want an early one of those too, like if I could find it, but just kind of like run of the mill, what you could find out there for sale. Yeah, probably something like a Loveless Big Bear would be really high on the list. Another one that just popped in my head though would be again, not an exact specific model, but an early Michael Walker liner lock. Since he basically pioneered him, and then Chris Reeves with the two of them kind of simultaneously, or whatever, from what I understand, with the frame lock. That's that would be. I mean, his work is just freaking phenomenal, regardless, without the historical aspect.
Yeah.
But having an early one of those, since it's basically paved the way for what we do, would be really cool. So
I think that's, I guess, where our perspective comes in, is more like a since we're in the industry, kind of giving thanks and recognizing those that came before us, the shoulders of the giants that we stand on, sort of thing.
Yeah.
But
I'll tell you, so I would be willing to bet that probably 8 or 9 out of 10 knife makers that you ask would give it would be something historical that they would want, and not something that's like currently being made or whatever, that just happens to be their favorite maker right now or whatever. So could be wrong, but I definitely would want something historical like that. And that's not counting like going back and maybe looking at some kind of like if you could get your hands on like an actual legit Jim Bowie or something like that. If we're talking money's no object, then maybe you could go back. Did your power just go out?
Yep.
It's just turned into a horror movie. How are you still on the screen?
I don't know.
Oh wow. Yeah.
It says I still have internet. Oh, I'm on a hotspot.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go.
So,
well, we're getting pretty close to our time anyway. So yeah, just do like hiding in the tent as a kid, flashlight horror movie here. Finish out. Hey, there you go. Or do that.
Sorry, my printer's back alive.
Yeah. All right. So I guess that kind of wraps that question up. Do we have one more that we might can hit kind of quick, or?
No, that was pretty much it for this week.
That's fine.
Yeah.
I think the powers that be, literally the power that be is telling us that maybe it's time to wrap it up. And that we've been kind of struggling, guys, and we're hoping that that you guys actually hear this, because we took a big risk with both of so I'm on Starlink in the shop out here, which works great all the time except when it's like raining really hard and stuff, and it's been crappy weather where we're at yesterday and today. So Chase is doing the same thing on his end. So it's like we've been hoping we could get this done before we lost connection or whatever, or power in his case. So we'll probably just go ahead and kind of wrap it up there, and we'll take what we can get here. So guys, please continue to send in questions and comments and suggestions. That's really, really helpful. We don't have to just guess at what you guys want to hear, and we can try to hit things that you want to hear. So please keep that up. We really appreciate all the support, all the comments, all of you that are subscribing and all that stuff. Please help us spread the word.
Yes.
I really appreciate it. If you guys just take the extra, few seconds it takes every week. Chase and I usually both put something about the podcast in our story when it drops or whatever. So if you could just repost those for us and share those out to your friends and stuff, that would be a huge help. We really appreciate that. So, you want to run the email address by everybody while we're talking about that?
Yep. So if y'all want to send us comments, concerns, questions, all that sort of stuff, knifefreakshow@gmail.com. That's knifefreakshow@gmail.com with one S. Or some of the questions from today were on comments on YouTube and stuff. I always generally look at those, even if I'm not that good at responding at them. I will read them, and if there's a question in them, I try to keep them saved and all that. But also for Blade Show, I will be at table 15B. He will be at table 424 with his crew, that sort of thing. So any of that sort of stuff, we'll be looking forward to seeing y'all there. But yeah, so one more time, knifefreakshow@gmail.com is where you need to send your stuff to us. So
awesome. We appreciate you guys taking the time out to listen to us ramble. Hopefully it's at least mildly entertaining, and we hope you guys have a great week.
And let your freak flag fly.